Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube, a Speaking Podcast. I have the Learn Polish podcast, the Awakening podcast, and the Meditation podcast, and all can be found on freedombroadcasters.com. Today, my guest, please welcome Bunny Young.
Hi, so honored to be here.
Great to have you. So, Stuntwoman, I see. So, you might tell the audience, who's Bunny Young?
Bunny Young is still figuring out who Bunny Young is. I remember when you're a kid, they ask you what you're going to be when you grow up. My question is, when are we grown up? Because I think that that's relative. But yes, I've been a stunt woman. I'm a serial entrepreneur, proud mother, army wife. And I think that I was put on this earth to make the world a better place. So that's just my hope, is that each and every day I by the end of this podcast, in this interview, that I have made your world just a little bit better.
Beautiful. Yeah, love it. Love it. So I always like to know the person's speaking journey. So obviously, you've done a lot of speaking, but like you're proud of your kids, but what were you like as a child?
Oh my gosh, what was I like as a child? Practically perfect in every way, I think. I mean, I always joke with my parents because I was an only child and I came from two very, very large families. And so being an only child was somewhat of an anomaly. And my cousin and I were very close. He's like my brother, he still is. And we're still very close. But as a child, I did a lot of traveling. I was doing professional modeling, and I also did a lot of competitive sports. And so my childhood was filled with a lot of surfing, a lot of traveling, horseback riding. Pretty much my mom was always there. She owned her own company and my dad worked with her. And so my mom designed this life of freedom where I don't mean to say that anything that I wanted was provided, because it was always modeled to work very hard and you could have what you wanted. And I got very good grades. And I remember my grandmother telling me that I was going to spend the same amount of time in class as somebody who got a C. So why not get an A? And so I worked hard on my academics, and with the exception of math, pretty much everything was a delight for me to be able to learn. So I think as a child, I was mature because I spent a lot of time around adults. I didn't spend a whole lot of time other than playing sports around kids my age. And I spent a lot of time questioning the whys and the reasons and all of the things. And my mom has the patience of a saint in the aspect that she would not just tell me the reason why. Most of the time we would take a field trip or a road trip or whatever, and she would show me. And same with my dad. My dad is very quiet and also very intentional. So we spent a lot of time, as when I was a child, in silence, working side by side, shoulder by shoulder in the garage while he was creating something and I was destroying something, just to see how it worked. He pointed that out to me recently, that I never actually put anything back together. I just managed to disassemble things just to see how they worked, and then never actually put them back together. So, and my childhood, for those of you who are wondering, was in Southern California, but I also spent some time in South America, and my family had the pleasure of being able to travel to a bunch of different places when I was growing up. So I had an amazing adventurous childhood. Adventurous, I don't think that's a word, but
No, it is.
clearly
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Adventurous,
Okay.
yeah.
I had a very adventurous childhood, and it was amazing.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I assume because of the entrepreneurial parents, that's why you became entrepreneurial, because you were kind of influenced by that.
In fact, it's not a untrue statement to say I was influenced by it, because my mom's parents are entrepreneurs. Well, my mom's dad. started several companies. And then my parents, of course, had their companies or their company. So I decided that the only thing that I did not want to do is be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to own my own company. I didn't want to run my own company. So I went to school to be an international civil rights lawyer. And then I changed and got a double undergraduate double major in political science and psychology. And I decided I was going to be a therapist. And so I went to be a therapist. And I found that in every single one of my careers, even as a stunt woman, that I was trying to find ways to improve the system and the process of the business behind whatever it was that we were doing. Even in nonprofits, when I was volunteering, nonprofits are still a business, they're still a company. And I think it was just in my DNA to try to improve upon my thinking process was that if I could help them function better, it would make my job easier. If I could help them with systems and programs and the way that they thought about things, because a lot of entrepreneurs love what they do, but they don't love running a business, growing a business, starting a business, and all of those details. And I'd done it. I had grown up in it and I had been a part of it. And so it really wasn't that difficult for me. And I remember as a child, the last thing that I wanted to do was to go to the school nurse and have my mom have to pick me up, because my mom would take me to this brown corduroy couch in her office and I'd have to lay there because she still had a company to run. And it's not that the company was any more important than me. She gave me all of my attention and all of the love and care, but I needed a rest. And so, she would just put me on the couch. And so I begged the school nurse to just let me stay at school, even if I was like throwing up and not, feeling good, because I didn't want to go and just sit in an office. And so once I found myself as a therapist sitting in an office, I was like, this is really not what I want. And that took me on this journey of just continuing to try, continuing to fail, to make friends with my failures and realize what in those failures I loved and what parts of it that I loved. And so I took a little bit of being a stunt woman, a little bit of starting a lifeguarding and swim company, and a little bit of being an EMT and all of these different kinds of things, and being a therapist, and put them together, looked in my toolbox one morning and was like, what am I going to do? And there was no job description that matched all of the tools that I had. And what I really wanted to do was to go into companies and help companies realize that the power of human potential, and that, humans aren't resources, they're humans. And that mental health isn't something that we just should talk about in a therapist's office, that it should be a part of our conversations the same way that we talk about how our employees' physical health and our team's physical health is important. So I set out on a quest to be able to do that. I had some amazing mentors, and it got to the point where my accountant was like, you can't do this as like a side hustle anymore. Like, this has to be an LLC. We have to take expenses and this kind of stuff. So being an entrepreneur happened to me, and I'm grateful for it. And then now my family jokes, primarily my kids and my husband, that there's this little kids movie called Robots, and the robot is always inventing things. And his motto is see a need, fill a need. And the joke in my company is that I see a need, start a company. And so I have 5 at the moment, and I've closed, I've sold, I've grown, I've at any one time, but it feels like 5, I guess, is the amount that is a good amount for me, because that seems to be the amount that I continue to return to. So last year I had 4 and it just wasn't enough, so had to add 1 more.
It was an imbalance you needed to get
I
to.
don't know. I have 5 Great Danes too, so it could be something around that number.
Very good. And like, how did you become a stunt woman? Where did that come from?
So the story is that I became a stunt woman because my husband told me that he had the opportunity. He's a stunt man, and the most talented stunt man that I've ever witnessed in my life. And that's not just because I'm married to him. However, we were dating and he had this opportunity to go to China and do a contract for a year. And he said, well, can I bring Bunny with me? And they said, well, she can only come if you're married. This is what I was told. Remember, like I was told this by him. So now the family assumption is that he just sold me a bill of goods because he wanted me to marry him. And so I married him and became a stunt woman to go to China. And the truth is that I'd probably follow him anywhere in the world, and he's followed me everywhere in the world. And so that's how I became a stunt woman, is because I couldn't just go to China and do nothing. I convinced them to give me a job, and you know, a 6'3" blonde in China is not something that is very common. And so I was actually quite the attraction. And I'm not somebody who likes to be touched, and I'm not somebody who is very coordinated. And so doing a live action stunt show where afterwards you go and you meet the crowds and they're taking pictures with you and all of that kind of stuff, not my favorite part of everything. And then learning actually how to be a stunt woman and doing the falls and having your body awareness. From being an athlete, I was somewhat equipped, but at the same time, for any stunt professional, the amount you see one stunt professional in a movie or a live action stunt show, you don't realize that there are 15 people supporting that one stunt professional. And so that's really where I learned the importance of calculated risk. And that carried over into business more than I had imagined it ever would. And also the importance of having a really high quality A+ team, because when you're on fire, you don't want the person who wasn't paying attention during like the fire extinguisher class. You're putting your life in somebody else's hands. And my team, I put my clients and my company in their hands, because I don't run 5 companies. I own them. I don't run them. And so even, you know, stepping back and having a CEO that's actually running a company for you, that's something that ironically enough, I think that was brought home to me most as a stunt woman, was the importance of having a really strong, dependable team behind you, and how it's not the CEO that is making the show happen. It's everybody behind the scenes as well.
No, very interesting. Very nice story too. I like that, you know, your husband's thing that you had to get him married. I mean, you're both happy with that decision, so yeah, that was that.
Hey, I got a free trip to China and 2 beautiful children, so I think I got the good end of the deal.
Yeah, very good, definitely. So regarding your speaking, I mean, obviously, I know that when you're in a company, because you know you have to get your message out, and like, I mean, I've had a load of companies as well myself, in that 20 plus, and I say at times you're kind of like an agony aunt, you know, this, because you have to adjust to the mood that someone's in, the relationships they're in, and to get the best out of people. So just how are you communicating with in not just current, maybe even previous ones?
Yeah, I think my grandfather used to say unaccustomed to public speaking. Like that's how he would start a speech, would be unaccustomed to public speaking, and everybody would laugh. He's 100% Irish, and so he would tell me that his only fluency was in Blarney, which is this basically, for anybody who's not Irish, it's the American translation would be BS. So, you know, but he spoke and people trusted him. And so was he a professional public speaker? No. He communicated with honesty and authentically and caring to his team. And when he passed away, there was not enough room in the place that we chose to have his celebration of life. I mean, people were packed in the hallways, there were people outside, there were cars lying down the street. I didn't know that my grandfather knew that many people. And there were stories from people that worked for him 20 years ago on how he had impacted their life just because he took the time to speak to them. And so I didn't consciously become a professional speaker. And I also was in a really bad car accident a few years ago. And so public speaking at that point, it was very intimidating because I have a TBI. And so, which is a traumatic brain injury. And so my executive functioning when you ask me a question and my brain's ability to process the question and then provide a response was severely impacted. It's going on inside of my brain, but finding the words to share it with you is severely impacted. So when you think about somebody who's a professional speaker and people are paying money to take the stage, the fact that the first time that I did that, it took so much strength and courage and confidence. And I was shaking as, I grabbed the podium and said, look, I was in a really serious car accident, and this speech is not going to be perfect. It's going to be labored. It's going to be difficult for me. And I hope that by the end of it, you have gotten what you need out of it. I'm just trusting that my words are going to come the way that they're supposed to come. And, we're going to go on this journey together. And that authenticity, that vulnerability resonates with humans. And, more so than if I went up there and said every word perfectly and never struggled for a word or never cussed. Like, that's the other thing. My mother wishes so much that I would stop cussing. Sometimes I can't find a word other than that word. And so I'm not doing it because I want my mom to be any less proud of me, and she never would. However, it's just sometimes in order to get your message across, that's the only word that I could possibly come up with. So am I a public speaker and a professional speaker? Yes, by definition of the aspect that people pay me to come and share my message. And being blessed with that platform, I think, has come from just my willingness to show up and not be perfect and say, we're not going to be perfect. And oh, by the way, like, the way that we're doing this is possibly not the right way. Like, possibly we should think about humanity as one big herd and all be in this together, and admit that we're not perfect, and admit that literally social media is a highlight reel. Like, the posts that get the most likes, the most engagement, are people crying and people being honest, and people, in either the highest high of their life or the lowest low of their life. And that's because that's really where we find connection.
No, definitely. And like, when you're doing a speech, like, how are you preparing? Like, is it something that you've developed after because obviously you were very vulnerable at the start. Do you still have that problem, or is it all resolved?
Yes.
It's
No, I still have that problem, Roy. And you're you're asking me this question, and anybody who's listening to it is gonna now know. Like, the secret is that um, I will prepare forever, and then it all goes to the wind as soon as I step in front of that microphone, because I have the energy of the audience. Even for today, Roy, you didn't give me a whole lot to go on. And so there is an energy for which I believe is from the before the accident, where I want to be the prepared professional businesswoman and I don't want to screw up. And then there's this energetic release once it starts, where I'm just having a conversation with you and knowing and hoping and trusting that anybody who's listening to this right now, if they're still listening, is getting something that they need from it, the same kind of way that a plant gets nutrition. And so I would rather not stick to my script for the sake of finishing my script if I feel that there's something else that's needed to be provided during that interaction. So what I found is that, and I just had this conversation with an individual coaching client, is because, he'll be like, say what you just said again. And I was like, this is why we record this. I can't say what I just said again. I don't remember what I said. It just comes out. I feel it from my heart, and my head is like, go for it. And my filter is broken. And so whatever is thought and felt just comes out of my mouth. And again, my mom's probably wishing that Amazon had a new filter for her daughter. But it is what it is. So if I feel it and I think it, I say it, I share it. And if it resonates, great. And if not, then really it's something that I probably needed to hear. At the end of the day, it's something that I needed to hear. And so, I don't think that anything that comes out of my mouth is a coincidence or not intentional. It's either something that you needed to hear, your listeners needed to hear, I needed to hear, or maybe one of my dogs needed to hear.
No, I totally agree. And regarding like scripting and sending questions and everything, it's something that, I know a lot of people like that, but I prefer that you're having a conversation. And like I always say, like even when I'm listening to a podcast, I say I'm like a fly on the wall, just listening in on a conversation. And
Mhm.
am I enjoying this? And you just don't know where it's going. Whereas if you have it scripted and you have the questions, and sometimes when somebody is kind of has it too prepared. And some people like that kind of podcast, but I find that being the natural, I mean, it's in, I don't know, 90 odd countries, it's in the top 1%, so people are obviously enjoying it. So not only will they stay engaged in this conversation, but they'll be telling their friends, hey, you need to listen to this.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Congratulations to you. And thank you for doing this so that so many people get impacted by it.
Brilliant. And with like you've done some workshops and like events, have you done? Yeah, she might just tell us a
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah. So my favorite thing to do is to bring a team of people to a ranch with horses, because one of those tools when I looked in my toolbox is I grew up with horses, and my family had horses. We now have horses. And so being able to really sit back and know that horses have been here for 5 million years. Humans have only been on earth for 200,000. And so learning how they function successfully together. That's one of my, you talk about speeches. That's one of the 5 minute kind of disrupt HR presentations that I did here in the States. Was I had to describe in 5 minutes the power of a herd, which you've heard the quote, if you want me to speak for an hour, then give me 5 minutes. If you want me to speak for 30 minutes, give me a week to prepare. If you want me to speak for 5 minutes, give me a year. Squeezing all that in 5 minutes was intense. So my favorite thing to do is an equine retreat, because I can sit back as a human and say, what do you notice about these creatures and how they interact with each other and how they interact with you? Because in a work environment particularly, there's this prey versus predator environment, because there's a hierarchy of my supervisor, my boss, and my team, my employees, my staff. And within a herd, it's not that there's a hierarchy, but it's more of like, think about it as a humanocracy. Everybody is fulfilling their purpose within a herd. And because they're fulfilling their purpose to the best of their potential, they're the strongest herd possible. So if I was born to be, to climb trees, then I would naturally be given that ability to climb trees. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb trees, it's going to be a failure. And so when you're in one of these retreats, it's a chance to leave everybody's cell phone in the car. And most people don't have a ton of experience with horses. And if they do, they don't have a ton of experience with my horses. And the first question and most common question, Roy, is, when are we going to ride them? And I'm like, isn't that such a human thing of like, how long do I need to train you before I can just let you loose and you can start making me money in my company? And the when you get on a horse, the next time that you sit in a saddle, I want you to think about the fact that on average, it's about 1,000 hours of training that has gone into your ability to safely swing your leg over that saddle and sit on that horse. And that every cell of evolutionary DNA in that horse's body says, buck you off and run away, because it's essentially a zebra letting a lion climb on its back and carrying that lion around for a little while. And the horse is getting nothing out of it. It's just trusting that you're not going to hurt it. And so I mean, I could talk for hours around my fascination with herd behavior and how humans can learn so much from horses. And when I get the chance to, I run workshops on it for Fortune 500 companies, for entrepreneurs, all about self-care and herd dynamics and all of that kind of stuff. Because I think that is where the most learning takes place, is when we get out of our element, out of our comfort zone, and we lean into something and look at really like the true experts on working together successfully. They've survived 5 million years. We're barely surviving at 200,000. Like, so that's my favorite thing to do. That's my favorite concept to speak on, is the power of a herd and what we can learn from, horses, and being able to do retreats and workshops at the ranch. And we do them here in the States. I've done them out in other countries. And it's important for me to know the herd that I'm working with. But for the most part, we can still get a lot of lessons, no matter what country or where I'm at in the world. Bring me to a ranch, bring me a herd of humans, and we'll get some lessons.
Very good. And when you're like doing it for, say, the Fortune 500, how do you structure it? Like, is it like a full day or a couple of hours, and how do you structure what you're going to do? Do you have it all written down? What's your kind of?
If I could literally wave my magic wand, I would have them out there for a week. Most of the time I get them for a weekend if it's for a Fortune 500 company. Sometimes I just get a day. And I tell them my responsibility is to keep the humans fed and the horses from eating the humans. And aside from that, everything else, we're just going to see what shows up, because there's no way on the face of this planet that I could go and tell the herd what my expectations of them for the day were. They just naturally feed off of the energy of the team. And then they respond, and then we discuss. And it sounds so simple, and yet speak to anybody who has done one of our equine retreats, and they'll tell you how profound it is. We had a sales team come out, and there was the team was tasked with catching the horse. And there are 2 horses in the pasture, and this guy was hell-bent on catching this one horse. And he is running full speed after this horse. For anybody listening, I feel like this is the disclaimer coming from the Stuntwoman. Do not try this at home. It's a very bad idea to chase down a horse. And they will outrun you. They have 2 more feet than you. And if they can't outrun you, then they're probably going to do something much more drastic in order to make sure that you don't catch them. That's not how they operate. Meanwhile, the rest of his company, his team, is standing there laughing. And the other horse has walked up to the rest of the team and is just standing there laughing with us. And like, what are you guys doing? And so the guy who's chasing this horse down has failed to realize that the objective was to catch a horse, and the other team, like his own team, had already caught a horse without a lead rope, without anything, and without having to chase him. They just stood there and were still, and the horse came. And he's still chasing. And I'm like, why are you guys laughing? And they said, this is what he does to prospects, is he chases them until they're exhausted. And then he gets a sale out of them, but they never want to work with our company again because of this experience. And I said, well, this horse is never going to want to come and work with him ever again, even if he does manage to catch it. And so we call him over, right? We stop the exercise, we call him over, and he is exhausted. He is sweating. He is like about to pass out. I get him some water, and I'm like, what was your plan if you caught the horse? He's like, well, I was going to grab him around the neck. I mean, he didn't miss a beat. He's like, I was going to grab him around the neck, and I was going to pull him down on the ground and hold him until the rest of the team could come. And I was like, have you ever met a horse? Like, you're talking about conservatively a 1,200-pound animal that you maybe weigh 180 pounds. So it's got some poundage on you. And your plan was to wrestle this thing to the ground. And the team and I was being serious, and the team is just laughing. And I'm like, I don't think it's funny that you're putting yourself in danger, in physical, mental, emotional danger to get a sale. And you're also risking your company's reputation by your actions. And the rest of your team is watching you do it, and they're not saying anything to you. Like, talk about a truth bomb. Beautiful. Like, imagine where you go after that. How else do you have that conversation in a conference room to be like, oh, so, okay, John, you are chasing down prospects. They're actually scared of you and they never want to do business with the company again. And he'd be like, I have the highest conversion rate of any salesperson because I get the most prospects. Well, you're chasing the most horses into submission. Yeah, you get the most prospects, but retention, this person over here has the highest retention.
I love it. Yeah, that's
And his
excellent.
name wasn't really John, for the record. Just I was making that part up.
Yeah. Have you done a TEDx, or have you?
I'm doing a few. So last year we had a couple TEDx opportunities, and then obviously last year happened. So TEDx, as the organization's making up its mind on doing virtual versus in person, but 2021, I have a few scheduled around the world. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that and to travel. And if it needs to be virtual, then I'm open to that as well. But yes, I'll be actually taking the stage on the power of a herd and sharing that with the world on the TEDx stage, which I feel incredibly honored, and also know as soon as I hit that red circle that anything that comes out of my mouth is going to be nothing that I planned. So I hope the TEDx organization does not get a chance to listen to this before they accept the application, because I know and I honor their process and how they want it to be just so. But I also know that my process is just to honor whatever said in that tiny little red dot. And I also have never seen an individual with a service animal. I'm not saying that it's not been done on a TEDx stage, but I've never seen a service animal in the little red dot. And so I have a big, huge Great Dane service animal. And so when the video comes up, I'll share it with you. But I imagine when they put it out on YouTube, I'm going to be incredibly proud to be providing just physical awareness to individuals with disabilities and service animals.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I'll be looking out for that one. Very good. And like the coaching, because you're doing coaching, yes. So you might explain a bit of the coaching that you're doing.
Yeah, so for the most part, I only work individually with 4 clients a year on the individual coaching. And A Better Place Consulting works primarily with Fortune 500. We work with a variety of organizations on work-life alignment. And then there's courses that if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an individual in a corporate environment and you're looking for more work-life alignment, we have a course called Defy that has all of those toolboxes, that has that toolbox, has the videos, and has group coaching within it. But working individually one-on-one with me is something that evolves within your relationship with our company. It's not, you don't pick up the phone and call and say, I want to work individually with you. It's something that I've found that is a natural evolution of those that have either worked with a company or with a team that we've worked with. And so I love that opportunity. Or somebody who's worked individually with me can recommend an individual. So it's very, very word of mouth, and it's not so secretive. It's just the aspect that I spend the majority of my time with my horses and my family. And so I do my best to create my content in the most shareable and accessible way. And so I know you're going to ask. So YouTube and Instagram are the places that have the most of my thoughts and content. And the website also has all of those courses on there. And it also has a place for you to find the YouTube library. I'm very open and honest that any thought that I've ever had, it's in between these 6 inches between my ears, is on a YouTube video somewhere or a Facebook Live in our Facebook Difference Makers group. You just have to search for it and find it. So any of my individual coaching clients, I'll tell them that. And I said, the only benefit of working with me individually is that you get it delivered when it's most important to you, rather than having to search through hundreds of hours worth of me talking to a camera in order to get it. But having a heart condition and also the TBI, I've done my best to try to put all of that content out there. So I'm leaving a legacy, not just, a company.
Very nice, very nice. And let's finally, like, I mean, if you're doing a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff, have you any tips for people? Because a lot of people fear doing that. They fear seeing themselves. They fear actually, just taking the leap of doing it. So you might have.
Just imagine that there is one person sitting there waiting to hear your message. And, I have clients that'll ask me, well, I did an Instagram live and none of the little eyeballs popped up and said anybody was watching. Well, just know that Instagram doesn't actually always get that correct. And that the odds of you doing that and nobody seeing it are slim to none. That's not a reality. Somebody's going to see it somewhere, and that person needed to hear that message. And I when I was a therapist, I had my supervisor say, because we have this on-call phone, I didn't want to take the on-call phone, and I was like, why are we always on call? And she was like, because that phone rings with somebody's life on the line. And this is one of the reasons I stopped being a therapist, is I never want my phone to ring with that kind of responsibility. So just think about when you are overcoming that fear to share whatever it is that you're sharing, that you're speaking directly into somebody's life that needed to hear that. You're their on-call phone. YouTube, Instagram, social media is now where people go to not feel so alone or to find their answers. And so, if you look at Google's search history, there is stuff as specific as how to tell my kids that I'm having an affair with a woman and going to divorce their dad, but I still love them and want to keep the dog. Like, why did we think that Google was going to have that answer? And then all of a sudden, articles pop up and 15 different people's opinions pop up. If you've thought it and if you have questioned it, other people have. And so the courage that it takes to just press record and have a conversation with the universe, know that there's somebody on the other side. So my advice would be to pick one person. If you want to pick Roy, you can pick Roy and talk to Roy. Talk to the younger version of yourself that needed to hear think of 5 things that you wish you heard as a younger version of you, and say those 5 things to the younger version of you, and just hit record and say those 5 things, because there is somebody out there who needed to hear those. And maybe, just maybe, you needed to go through the exercise to be able to say them.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. That's deep and beautiful. So how can people get in contact with you, Bunny?
If you want me, I'm on Instagram at Bunny Has 6 Legs. So it's at Bunny Has and then the number 6 legs, because of my service animal. And you can find that through the website. And the website's bunnyyoung.com. And YouTube is the best place to find my content. So I tell people I'm on Instagram, not very often, but if you want to go find what I'm doing day to day, Instagram is where it is. If you want to find my content, then YouTube is definitely where most of that is. And if you want to find a place to find it all, it's all linked on the website, bunnyyoung.com.
Perfect. Yeah, listen, it's been beautiful talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com or on BitChute or on YouTube at Speaking Podcast. Until next week, take care.